Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Bristol Township Zoning Hearing Board. I'd like to get started with stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remove your hats, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get started, let me introduce you to a few people. Sitting to my left is our solicitor, Ken Fetterman. We also got Director of L&I, Bob McTeague. And sitting in for Cindy Oliveira is Kim Chatburn, our stenographer. Mr. Secretary, can you call the board, please?
Gerard Lycon.
Here.
Mark DeMarcus.
Sure.
Jim McMahon.
Here.
Colleen Dunn.
Here.
Ed Murphy here.
All right, before we get started on the agenda, I do have one continuance and one withdrawal. So number one on the agenda is, this is a continuance. This is to the Department of Building and Planning and Development. Dear Sir, Madam, the application for a special exception referenced above is scheduled for a public meeting on April 10th, 2023. Due to some inconveniences, we request that the hearing on this application be postponed to the next available date for public meeting. Please do not hesitate to contact me for any questions or need clarification. Sincerely, Flavo Duran Ocha. So I need some kind of motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to continue.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
I would just say contingent upon the applicant waiving the right to have a hearing within 60 days.
For the record. Got a motion for continuance. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That's for May. All right. This is a withdrawal. This is via email to Colleen Costello, Administrative Assistant, Township of Bristol. Dear Ms. Costello, Besco Outdoor Media will need to put this application on hold for an unknown amount of time, and therefore we request to withdraw the pending application before the zoning hearing board. A new application will be made once Besco is ready to move forward. Thank you for your continued courtesies in this matter. Should you need anything further, please let me know. So that's number 3 on the agenda. That's a withdrawal. And number 9 on the agenda, we have representation for them. Please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Michael Floyd. I'm an attorney with Archer & Griner, appearing on behalf of the property owner, DK 2720 Archer LLC, which has submitted an application in connection with Ryder Truck Rentals for that same property. We are respectfully requesting a continuance until the May meeting so we can continue to prepare for the hearing, namely some additional exhibits.
I need a motion for a continuance.
I'll make a motion to continue.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
And then you'll bring up the proof of mailings next time, right?
All right, so starting on the agenda, Michael Ben Scooter, 731 Country Club Lane, Warrington, PA. Please come on up. Do you have your mailings? Hand them to the solicitor, please.
Yep. Sorry.
If you just make sure the green button's on, it might. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any proof of the posting, a picture or something that your property?
Yeah, sorry.
I see it. Okay, good.
All right, you can proceed.
All right. So I'm here seeking variance to get a second purpose, secondary principal use on the property. I operate Ben Scudder Accounting Solutions. So basically, I just want to go over the property layout, the history, and what we want to do here. Here's the plot plan of the property. It faces Plumbridge Drive. On the right side is 413 Veterans Highway. It's existing residential. It's where Robert Nelson's State Farm is. I've been attached to it. Here's the interior floor plan of it, how you enter. I think in 2010, Robert Nelson put an addition on, so I'd have my own entrance into the property. So that's front facing of the parking lot. The property itself, this is from the 413 side, showing parking. Everything has been existing on the property. A little bit of the property history. Cliff Nelson, who is Robert Nelson's father, purchased the property in 1963. In 1967, there was an attorney that was also there at the same time. So it was operated as an attorney's office for a year and insurance business at the same time. Also, I got this from Bob Nelson. He's my source for the information. So in 1968, John Lynch was an accountant that also rented a portion of the property, which at the same time, his dad had the insurance business, just showing that there was a history of the property being used for multiple businesses at the same time. 1997, Bob Nelson purchased the property from his father, and at the same time his father told him that the board agreed that it was zoned professional for attorneys, doctor offices, all that type of thing. In 2010, Bob Nelson came to make sure that it was, came, I think, to the township to make sure it was zoned R3. He went through that process when he built the addition. And so here's pictures of the property in question. It's office space. It has a little waiting room. The entrance that the property that he built. And so I've been here in 2008 is when I originally started operations. I got permits at the same time for banners when I started and signs. So I've been dealing with the township since that point. I've paid everything I was supposed to pay. So just what I do is individual and small business tax preparation, bookkeeping for customers, and payroll as services that I offer. And that's basically it. So.
All right, anybody have any questions? Bob, anything to add?
No, Jim, just there was a approved professional office use, which means it's supposed to be resident occupied, and he's supposed to operate the business out of there.
Right.
I don't know if he's occupying a home at this time, or he's just operating a State Farm business out of there.
Bob Nelson's operating a State Farm. I'm operating the accounting business, so I don't actually live there now.
Oh, then I have nothing to add, Jim.
Nobody lives there at all.
Now, there's a sleeping room upstairs that somebody lives, so it's rented to a disabled veteran that lives there, so there is somebody that dwells there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, come on up, sir.
just to add to that,
Just speak into the microphone, please, Mr. Nelson.
the home has never been occupied as a home.
Yeah, I think you gotta be sworn in too.
I'm
please.
sorry.
Sir, do you swear that the testimony you give today will be
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that home, now, I was 7 years old in 1963, but from what my dad told me, Laurie Post was the first owner of that property. He was an attorney here in Bristol Township, and that home has always been a business. And that I just wanted to add to it. It was never a residence. It was supposed to get changed to the R3, which I formally did because it never got done by my dad. They tabled it back in 1967, and he never went back to get it formally done. But all those notes were in the system, so when I went back to get it formally done, they were there.
So the other business in there is a State Farm, is that's what you
That's
stated?
my business.
That's your business?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody from the audience like to come up, public comment?
Just had one question. This gentleman,
You gotta come up and get sworn in, speak into the microphone, sir.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I do. I was just confused. The one gentleman said there was someone living there, and he's telling us nobody ever lived there. I'm just confused.
Well,
I can answer that.
come on up.
There's a sleeping room upstairs,
All right.
and it's always been a sleeping room. So even when Laurie Post was there, they had it as a sleeping room.
Give me the definition of a sleeping room.
No cooking facility.
No cook- Okay,
That's number one that I know. No cooking facility at all.
okay.
Pretty much, I think that it addresses it.
In other words, the property was never used as a primary residence.
That I know of.
Right, okay.
I know.
That's your testimony.
Yeah. I was cutting the grass in 1967 or 66, so Laurie Post, I still remember his sign. It was out there. He was the attorney, and then when my dad came in, he had a space there.
All right. So, can somebody answer, there's no conditions on this whatsoever, like if they,
The sleeping room issue, we'll have to address off record through code enforcement, Jim. We just found that out now, so.
Right.
This was found through a fire inspection. The zoning hearing board ruling stated that the professional office use means that there, by definition, has to be
Right.
residents staying in the business, and it's supposed to be the business operator.
so if they go to sell this property, if whoever goes to sell this property stays as office property, can it go back to residential?
Yes, it can.
Unless the zoning's changed, it will be residential.
From the testimony here today, it seems that the State Farm business, as a professional office, has been operating illegally since, because it's not owner occupied.
So as a condition, could we state that if it does sell, it can't be, I can't, that wouldn't be fair, I guess.
You can impose any condition, the board can impose any conditions it wants to.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but does it go back to residential, or does it stay the same? It does.
Board will not be changing the zoning.
The use as of now is residential, it's residential with a professional office use.
Right.
So it's an accessory use to the single-family dwelling. But that was approved, meaning that the owner that is in the house is allowed to occupy and operate a business. But
Business has to be an ancillary use to the ownership.
And I just didn't understand that at the time, that I had it being occupied there.
All right, but if the board approves it, it's just going to apply to these circumstances.
Right.
If someone else buys the building,
Right.
the zoning's going to apply, and they'll have to come back here depending on the circumstances.
And to add to that, Jim, it's almost like the business has been operated as commercial use, that they're gonna need additional approvals if there's no owner occupying the business and the residents.
Yeah. So that's the conditions we got, that we're putting forth. I mean, you guys agree with that, or
Yeah, could you, I'm not sure I understand.
So the approval for the property now is for a professional office, meaning that you, Robert Nelson, are supposed to be occupying the residence as a home, but also operating your State Farm business out of that home. We found out today that is not true and that's not happening. We'll address that in addition to this
Okay.
secondary use that's gonna be approved to that. That's up to the board.
So under that R3 agreement, that's what you're saying, I was supposed to occupy that?
Under your zoning approval for professional office from back then.
You didn't apply for a use variance? That's really what you need for what you're doing?
I'd have to go back and take a look at that 2010 date.
Right.
All I remember going was into the office and saying it was supposed to be, they tabled it to go from
Yeah.
a R1.
If this makes more sense, it has nothing to do with the zoning of the property. It's
Okay.
more the use that's going
Right.
on there.
Yeah, and I've been there since 1997.
Understood?
Yeah, and I can see the chain of title in the deed. It's your family,
Yeah,
from your family, I mean,
Right.
basically.
yeah, bought it from my
What the
father.
board is saying is that this application really is for an ancillary use,
Okay,
presupposing that the owner of the property wants to conduct a professional business out of it. Okay? What you're really asking for is a use variance, which is not what this application is about. So either you would withdraw it and ask for the right variance, or the board could grant some type of relief with conditions that they only apply to you, that the property still remains R3, and the next owner, or whoever you would sell it to, would have to come back for the board and either use it as such or apply for a use variance. And that's really what's in front of the
so
board.
I'm actually applying.
Bob, can they still run their business as a, or no, they could?
I think we have to get the State Farm business issue corrected before, and I'm not speaking what the board can approve, but
Right.
before you approve a secondary use of the property, because there's a business operating there
Yeah.
to what they weren't approved for back when they were in front of the zoning hearing board.
Well, what I'm kind of getting at is, would it be prudent for them, like Ken said, to withdraw this application and then, and come back with the necessary?
Or ask for a continuance, modify it, maybe you want to get counsel that does this type of work,
Okay,
if
so
the
that
board
you're
were-
not sort of twisting.
yeah,
If the board were to approve today, you would be approving it on an illegally operating
Right.
business.
Right.
Okay,
Wouldn't recommend.
so.
So I just have a question, Bob. So the information that I had before I came here tonight, if I roll on that, this information you're giving us right now supersedes that.
No, it's just that we just found out that State Farm is operating not as a professional office, more as a commercial business. So we just found that out now because he's not operating a business.
So it's hard for us to rule now, learning that without knowing that in the past. I think a continuance is the best move.
I would agree.
It seems apparent that the sleeping room was an attempt to try to comply with the zoning, but it really isn't.
it may have been years ago. Yeah, maybe.
No one's casting any
Yeah, no, I
dispersions.
understand.
Yeah, no, we're not here to
Yeah.
do that. But, so what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, my address has always been either Warrington or Chalfont since
Right.
1997. I never lived there, I never said I lived there, I didn't have family living there. So, I've always operated as
So,
much as I
I
could.
think your best bet, and I'm not telling you what to do, to ask for a continuance for however long you think it's deemed necessary, 2 months, month, I mean, I don't know. But I don't know how this is gonna affect your business in any way either, that I don't know, you know? I don't have that answer, so,
Well,
I mean,
they
you've
were-
been doing it
Yeah, okay.
for this long, so, I don't see.
Hopefully you won't get too harassed until you straighten this out.
Bob, does he have a
So-
UNO?
2 months.
Bob, does he have a
continuance.
UNO there?
State Farm does, yes. Ben Scooter does not. That's why he's here
Who
today.
doesn't?
Ben Scooter, the accountant.
This gentleman right here.
Oh, well, does he have to go for the variance to get the UNO?
That's why we're here.
All right. Then what were we thinking about having him come back to do?
He has to correct the issue about operating a business as a business and not a professional
Yeah,
office.
either someone has to live there, in which case the board can approve an ancillary use,
or you need a use variance to operate a commercial business out of an R3 property.
Got it.
All right, so the point being, you need a continuance.
2 months.
2 months. All right, I need a motion for this continuance.
I'll make a motion for a continuance.
I'll second.
And you're gonna waive the requirements of a hearing pursuant to the code. Prompt hearing, a 60-day hearing, correct?
Waive the requirement.
Right, in other words, you're not gonna have a real hearing for another 60 days, which will be beyond the regulatory limit.
Okay.
And you agree to waive that limit,
Okay, yep.
yes?
Yes.
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 So I need, I got a motion, I got a second on continuance to June's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, thanks, guys.
Good luck, fellas.
All right, next on the agenda, Robert Marcus, 261 Lower Marsville Road, Fallsington. Please come on up.
Let me grab the pointer. Mike McGinnis from Begley Carlin on behalf of Bob Marquis.
Thank you.
What one you want up there, Mike?
Probably.
Area?
That works to start.
We're good on the postings and mail-ins.
All right, good evening. Mike McGinnis here tonight on behalf of Bob Marquis, who is with me in the audience as well. Mr. Marquis is the property owner of 1144 Grebe Avenue, which is the area I'm highlighting with the laser right now. That parcel number is 5-74-258, and it is located in the R2 district. As you can see, the property is presently improved with a single-family detached dwelling and a garage to the rear of the site. The property is a bit larger than a quarter acre. The proposal tonight is to subdivide the lot right here. And I would submit, it might be a bit confusing to anyone looking at the aerial, because if you happen to drive on Grebe Avenue and you took a look at the property, you would, and I would actually, presume that this lot was already subdivided, because there is a fence that separates the single-family detached dwelling, the garage, and the vacant space. Bob, if you don't mind flipping to the GIS map. Thank you. So this is a snapshot I cut out of the Bucks County GIS map, and if you take a look at the lot, again, this is the subject property. You can see here the single-family detached dwelling is really up against the property line with the adjacent parcel. Then you have the garage to the rear, and then you have a very large side yard. So what we're here for tonight is to subdivide the lot, and really, I would suggest bring it into closer conformance with the majority of the parcels, which are either on Grebe or between Grebe and Edgeley Avenue. This requires a couple of variances to facilitate the subdivision, but as you'll hear in a moment, most of the variances are either pre-existing conditions or I would suggest de minimis in nature. So for example, we need a variance from 205-26B to permit a lot width of each lot of 50 feet. In the zoning district, 60 feet is required, so we need a variance of 10 feet. If you take a look again on Grebe, the adjacent parcel and the property next to it are both 37.5 feet of width. We have a variance listed from 205-26E1 and 205-26E2 relating to front and side yards. This actually is with respect to the existing home and the front yard relative to Grebe and the side yard relative to the existing structure on the adjacent lot. So we are not exacerbating that condition. That's a pre-existing non-conforming condition and really has no impact on the subdivision. We have a variance from 205-26E4 and 205-26E5. And that's because the ordinance requires a double frontage lot, which this is on Pitt and Grebe, as you can see here, to have 25 feet in lot depth. So our proposal, we certainly have 25 feet to the rear, but because this is a double frontage lot, with the subdivision plan, Bob, if you can flip to the last one, please. The building envelope depicted here has a setback of 9 feet to the side, so that's why we are asking for that variance. But I will note, and you'll hear from Bob in a second, there is no plan in the immediate future to actually develop this site. I'll have Bob address that, but the reason for the application presently is Mr. Marquis is I don't want he's getting up there in age, I'll say that diplomatically, and he's trying to take care of the application for his children moving forward with the subdivision, but he's not planning to develop that in the immediate future. So we are asking for the depth in an abundance of caution vis-a-vis Pitt Avenue, but there is no intention in the immediate future to develop this site post-subdivision. And then finally, we have a variance from 205-26A for lot size. The lot that we're creating is compliant. This district has a minimum lot size requirement of 6,500 square feet. The remaining lot, this lot, would be 5,836 square feet. So a bit under the 6,500 square feet that's allowed, but again, I would suggest, as I said at the outset, the site's already been functioning de facto at 5,836 square feet. So we're looking at this almost as papering a formality to recognize the existing condition of how the lot's been utilized. Other than that, everything else is compliant. So as I said, would respectfully suggest that the variances are either de minimis in nature, in keeping with the surrounding communities, or really codifying existing non-conforming conditions for the home that's in place there. I do have Bob with me. I would like to have him offer brief testimony to the board, if that's okay.
I do.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Marquis. Can you please state your name for the record?
Robert Marquis,
All right. And where do you live?
7219 Ratcliffe Street.
Which is actually an adjacent parcel, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you do?
I'm a general contractor in servicing the tri-state area for 50 years.
Okay. And you currently own the subject parcel, which is before the board this evening, 1144 Grebe Avenue, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you heard my summary at the outset. The proposal is to subdivide the lot and to create another lot on the corner of Grebe and Pitt, as is depicted on the plan we submitted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as you could see with the aerial that we shared, the 1144 lot actually has a fence, which essentially already separates this lot from the lot that we're looking to create. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any immediate intention to develop on the lot that you're creating?
No.
Okay. And can you just briefly, I summarized it, but explain to the board why you are filing the application presently?
I'm filing the application because of my age. I don't want this to be a problem with the heirs of my estate in the future of having to subdivide the property so they can also have that parcel that abuts my existing property.
Okay. And then I shared with the board the existing GIS map. You're familiar with the subject area, obviously residing here, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it is your opinion that the lot that would be created is in keeping generally with the other lots in terms of size and width as the other properties on Edgeley and Grebe Avenue?
Yes.
All right. And then I summarized the variances, but we're essentially asking for a variance for lot width for the two properties, the depth of the corner lot, which is essentially the side yard with Pitt Avenue, and then lot size. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the others are pre-existing conditions with the existing lot vis-a-vis its immediate neighbor to the right, if you look at the plan.
Yes.
All right. Is there any reason, in your opinion, this would have a negative impact on the community or any of the other individuals who reside on Grieve or Edgeley Avenue?
No.
All right, I have nothing else. Happy to answer any questions the board would have.
Anybody have any questions from the board? Bob, anything to add?
Nothing, Jim.
Okay, Ken.
I was just gonna say, you understand that when it comes time to develop the lot, you have to come back to the board
Yes, I
for the
do.
proposed development, depending on what relief you may or may not need, or you're basically stuck with the relief.
No.
that you have now.
Yeah, I understand that, and I had made sure that we laid out everything to be in compliance with the code as far as building coverage and impervious surface on the drawings. And I realize if at any time anybody builds there, they would have to come back to Bristol Township.
As well as if he sells the property.
Correct.
That's also part of a condition too, I would imagine.
Yeah, you want permission to subdivide the lot, and that's it for right now.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody? Anybody from the audience?
Hi there, Cindy Murphy, 317 Dogwood Drive. Yes, I swear to tell the truth. I'm asking a question. I do. So is one of the variants, though, for that setback, that 9-foot setback? Is that one of the, in today's approval? I'm curious if we're giving a variance for a setback, but there's no plans.
Yeah, I don't
I thought you
see-
said that was one of the variances.
We have a variance, it was listed on Leapson's plan here for the lot depth because of Bob wanted to, I think, show that it's a buildable lot post-zoning approval. There's no actual building that's associated with this. So I think technically you could have submitted the application and not asked for a variance because there's no building lot. But I think the idea was that if somebody were to build on the property and the edge of the house was here, they'd have to come back to the zoning hearing board if you didn't procure a variance associated with this application.
Right, so you're saying they don't have to come back, right? If this is approved, based on what I understand the variances are, they don't have to come back and they can build that close, right?
Yeah, I would agree that it's up to the board, and I'll discuss it with the board, but I don't think the board should be approving something that's not gonna be developed, and they should come back, because generally speaking, approvals have to be implemented within a certain period of time, or they vanish, if you will. In this
Right.
case, the board would be taking a somewhat extraordinary step by granting these variances to allow a subdivision, but not knowing what's gonna be built on it. I would not recommend that they approve that type of a variance under these circumstances. The rest of it
Yeah.
is what it is.
I agree with that, right, you're subdividing, but the next one was, to me, just a
Right.
question that you're,
And that's not, by the
didn't
way,
think
that's
you
not
should-
on the zoning plan, this 9-foot that I see.
I think it's right here. I think it's
Right, that
depicted, I think it is
very,
depicted
yeah,
on
yeah.
the plan. But I don't have, can I
mean,
talk with
Mike,
Bob for a second?
Whatever the applicant would need to subdivide, that would be the limit.
The only reason I'm showing that's a 9-foot because of the steep slopes on Pitt Avenue, there would be no reason for, no way to take the access.
Right, but, well, that's fine. We'll withdraw the variance with respect to the lot depth. I think the intention was to show what would be a building envelope here at a later date.
I understand.
The point's taken that the zoning relief expires anyway if it's not submitted within a period of time. So the reality is the zoning relief would expire before an application was submitted. The act of granting the variance tonight, as was explained to Bob, would subdivide the lot. And then when someone went to build on the lot, you'd either be able to build in conformance with the code as it's currently in place.
Exactly.
Or at that time, if the building envelope expanded beyond what was allowed, that individual at that time would come in front of the board and request a variance to be within the side yard setback.
Right, because the public would have a right to know what the proposed building's gonna be, what it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Neighbors would
yeah,
share
so
that.
we'll withdraw the depth, the side yard depth variance.
All right, anybody else have any questions from the board? Anybody else like to come up and make comment from the audience? All right, so, I need some kind of motion. I'll make a motion to approve. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Call the board, please, Mr. Secretary.
Colleen Dunn,
Yes.
Mark DeMarcus,
Yes.
Jim McMahon,
Yes.
Gerard Lycon,
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next on the agenda is JRZ LLC, 500 Coventry Lane, Croydon. Please come on up.
Thanks again.
I'm gonna, if I can distribute this as well.
Thank you.
We might, as part of that, yeah, when we get into that, Larry. All right. Good evening. Mike McGinnis here on behalf of JRZ LLC. Subject properties are both 612 Coventry Avenue and 607 Second Avenue. If you can bear with me, I know I'm already long-winded. I'm going to be a little bit longer-winded than normal at the outset here because it's, I think this is a project that makes a lot of sense when you get to the end of it, but there are a lot of moving pieces. So I'm going to try to explain that at the outset, and then I'm going to have Rich Zober, who's with me, and then Larry go over some of the technical components of this. So some of the members of the board may recall that Rich and Larry were here with a colleague from my office last summer, and that was to propose a 3-unit townhome development right here on a vacant zoned commercial property, which is the 612 Coventry address. At that time, there was no development that was proposed or zoning that was proposed with respect to this property. And we're gonna get into the issues, I'm gonna say at the outset, that face the 607 property. The access to the townhomes in 2022 that was proposed was off of Coventry, even though, as was discussed at that meeting, Coventry is a bit of a mess, and Larry has pictures, and we can distribute those to the board. It's only 16 feet wide. There was a long conversation at that meeting about how Coventry isn't conducive to commercial development. That is not what this application is. There are townhomes that are proposed on this lot, but I think it's important to understand the big picture here, the underlying zoning and how we are proposing to, I don't want to say fix, but bring these properties closer into conformity with Bristol's zoning. So as I said at the outset, JRZ owns these two contiguous parcels. This parcel is 1/3 of an acre, and then the adjacent parcel is 0.83 acres. The 0.83 acre property is zoned residential. It's zoned residential despite the fact that presently there are 3 separate commercial uses that are occurring on that site. So maybe, Bob, if you can flip to the aerial condition. That's, yeah, and it, well. That's good enough to start, thank you. There you go, perfect. So you can see carved out, this is the property that was in front of the board a year ago. This is the current vehicular storage use at the intersection of 2nd and Coventry. Then there are 2 single-family detached houses here that are not in great condition. And then there are 2 commercial tenants, Micah Precision and R&D Automotive. All 5 of those separate uses are on the same residentially zoned lot. So again, you have a commercial lot, which I will note at the beginning actually was residential, and went back into records and I saw aerials from 2005. There was a house here on the commercially zoned lot. And then you have a bunch of commercial uses on the residentially zoned lot. And if you're familiar with the area, you have 13 here, and my experience getting to the site, a lot of people go under the rail lines, and then if you access on Coventry, you make the right onto Coventry, you have the vacant parcel, you have this, I'm going to label it a residential parcel right now with the mix of different uses, and then you have Zober's larger operation, which is right over here, and that is a large manufacturing operation. They do sheet metal machining, cabling, printed circuit board assembly, where there's approximately 185 employees. Now it's a different entity, but it's controlled by the same principles, and Rich is here again this evening. So when you look at this all together, I think it's a bit of a mess. We were proposing a residential use on a commercially zoned lot, and then you have the commercial uses on the residential zone lot. What we're doing tonight, I'm going to provide all this and then I'm going to summarize it again. So, we're proposing 3 townhomes still, similar to what was proposed at the board before, but different for reasons we're going to get into, including the access point. We are proposing to rezone, and I understand the zoning hearing board does not have the authority to rezone the property. But as we've discussed with the township, if we are able to get zoning relief for this, as part of any land development application, we'll condition this on rezoning the parcel to R3, which if you look at the GIS map, you have some commercial zone pieces, but the vast majority is zoned R3. So we would rezone this to R3, which isn't perfect, but it is much better for the proposed use. And then we would delete this. This goes away. So the entire outdoor storage activity, which is occurring on the corner, goes away. This house, which is, my understanding, is vacant and dilapidated, goes away. This house goes away. There is a parking expansion, which is proposed, which is going to help the Micah Precision and the R&D Automotive use here. The new lot line goes right here. So this becomes, contiguous, right? One lot. This is then zoned R3. This zoning switches from R3 to commercial. So instead of the walking contradiction that we have right now, you have a residentially zoned R3 use here. You have 3 townhomes here. You have underground storage detention basin, stormwater detention basin here, which greatly improves the current stormwater management that is going on at this location. You have, and maybe Bob, if you can go back to the site plan. Now, if you take it down, sorry, we got a lot here. There you go. So this shows what's in front of you, basically. 2 clusters of 3 townhomes, 6 total, 18 parking spaces, green space, stormwater, detention. Delete, this is 2 parking spaces. Delete the house, delete the house, delete the storage use, expand the parking to help these tenants. This becomes commercial, which it should be, and is allowed because this is commercial, so it's not a spot zoning issue. This becomes residential, like it should be, and access instead before where we were, what was proposed last month or last year was coming off of Coventry. The access point is in off of Second, and then you just have a shared access easement and parking easement in place with this development. So it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of moving pieces, but I would suggest that this is a heck of a lot better than the current situation. It's not perfect. We're not saying it's perfect, and it's not the perfect zoning. If we could have picked any zoning district, it wouldn't have been R3, but we need to be able to survive any spot zoning challenges, right? It has to be zoned like similar parcels, and since this is R3, the closest that we could get was R3 in terms of zoning. I'm gonna get into, in a second, the variances, and I know when you look at the application and you look at the notice, there are a lot of variances that are on here. And if I wasn't familiar with this and I was looking at the notice, I would say there's a lot of variances. How is that gonna work? And I don't wanna oversimplify things, but I'm going to anyway. Almost all of the, and I'll explain what they are, but almost all of the variances that are associated with the townhomes are not because we're trying to overdevelop this piece for townhomes. It's because we're applying the R3 zoning district for a townhouse use. So we have a batch of dimensional variances associated with the townhomes. In addition to the permission, you can have multifamily and you can have single, but townhomes aren't technically permitted. So we're fitting this in to the R3 zoning district, but almost all of the dimensional variances I would suggest are because of the R3 being an imperfect underlying zoning district for the townhouse development. And then you have a handful of variances associated with the commercial aspect that, again, we're not changing. The vast majority of those variances are pre-existing non-conforming conditions that we've papered as part of the application. So when we get to this with specificity, the variances for lot size and width and side yard and density and common space, those are because the R3 district isn't envisioning townhomes, right? So that is why we need those variances. We are compliant with things that we can comply with, such as parking. I'll make one other point at the beginning, just to underscore this. Because the R3 is not envisioning townhomes, I think as Larry noted in one of Tri-State's explanations of zoning, of course we're gonna need a side yard variance for things like the middle unit because there is no side yard, right? And the R3 isn't envisioning townhouses. We have 45% impervious surface, so I would suggest not a significant impervious surface percentage, and it's being captured by stormwater basins, which are not presently on site. We have existing condition variances in place from the commercial use. So again, for example, we have a variance to not allow a loading space. There aren't loading spaces presently on site with the commercial uses. We are improving the parking situation. So we've technically asked for a variance for parking, but you can see we are improving the parking on site with the commercial use. We have a variance for no buffering between a commercial, industrial use and residential. Again, that's an existing condition. There's a house here, there's a house here. And then we have an impervious surface variance where we're over by approximately 3%. And again, right now, if you look at the site, and Larry can explain the kind of the mishmash of the impervious, pervious, stone, what's going on in this property, we're making the situation on a whole better from a stormwater management standpoint. So I think if you silo these two things, on one hand, you have variances for mostly existing conditions for a lot that we're making commercial now that's zoned residential. And then you have a batch of dimensional variances for 2-3 unit clusters of townhomes that correlate to the zoning that underlies the zoning district. But if you keep your focus on the big picture at the end of the day, I think this is much, much better than what exists now. And I will state before Rich testifies that he discussed, I believe, at the zoning hearing board a year ago, that because of the number of employees that Zober has in this area, we know that there is a housing demand for this. We can't, I think it was discussed but then discarded, there's enough of a demand, we think, even for something like apartments, but that's not in keeping here. We went with townhomes to sort of split the difference between single family and apartments because we're eliminating 2 houses, we're eliminating a big commercial use. We're planning on building, again, the 2 clusters of 3 townhomes, which I think is an appropriate density here. We recognize that the majority of the uses are single-family detached that aren't commercial here, but we know, we looked at that as a middle ground between the single-family detached and the townhome or the apartment use at this location because we know there's demand for at least 6 units on this corner. So I appreciate bearing with me for the summary. I don't normally go into that much depth, but I think there's a lot of moving pieces here that I wanted to orient the board to before I had anybody testify to anything with specificity. So if that's all right, at this time, I'd like to have Rich Zober be sworn in, and then when he's done, I'm going to have Larry do kind of a comparison between what was proposed before, what the existing conditions are, and what we're proposing moving forward.
I do. Yeah.
All right. Good evening.
Good
Rich,
evening.
can you state your name for the record, please?
Richard Zober.
I'm sorry. Guys. Thank you.
Richard Zober.
All right. And you're a principal with JRZ, is that correct?
Yes, managing member.
All right. And you're also a principal of Zober Properties, which operates the large manufacturing operation at 500 Coventry, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that employs approximately how many people?
185 plus or minus.
All right. And many of those people, I'm assuming, are Bristol Township residents, is that a fair
Yes,
assumption?
yes.
All right. And we're here, I had a summary at the outset for the 2 properties that are contiguous that JRZ owns on this section of Coventry, is that correct?
Yes,
All right. And we appeared at the zoning hearing board a year ago to request the construction of 3 townhomes just for this vacant commercial lot, is that right?
yes,
And in fact, this lot used to have a residential use on it, is that true?
that's true.
Okay. And it was discussed at the time, a year ago, the need for housing that your business and your employees have, is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And one of the issues that came up a year ago was that even though this is zoned commercial, there were some issues with having a commercial tenant because of the limited access and the narrow width of Coventry and any trucks that access Coventry and are trying to make this turn. Is that a fair summary of the hearing a year ago?
Yes,
And after the application got denied, I took it as an opportunity to do a more comprehensive design change at this site. Is that a fair characterization?
yes.
All right. Can you explain just real briefly if the board just looked at the current use at the 607 property, the number of tenants, what's going on there at the site right now?
With the,
Right here.
yeah, the R&D Automotive
Yep.
and the,
They're here.
correct, that's R&D, correct. And that's the small machine shop.
Okay. And there are two houses approximately here. And
Right, correct. Where it is now is a smaller home, and then there's a home there that's not, it's been deemed uninhabitable, so it's got to get tore down anyway.
Okay. And this,
And that is, as you can see, parking and storage for various items.
all right. And that's all occurring on one property right now?
Correct,
Which
correct.
is zoned residential?
Yes,
Okay. So before we get into the more technical aspects of this with Larry, the big picture of our application is to basically have a lot line change here and then have two clusters of 3 townhomes on this area and this area. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. And with that, there would be a removal of both this home, and a removal of the storage of trailers and vehicles, which is occurring at this intersection. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then there is a parking lot expansion here as part of the plan.
Yes.
And just, can you explain just briefly part of that to improve where the tenants are currently parking some of their vehicles? You can actually see it here.
Yes, I mean, R&D during the daytime has so many vehicles that there are times that they're actually on Second and Magnolia, so they need the extra space to park the vehicles as they come in for repair. So the extra parking would help a great deal for keeping the road clear.
Okay. Why did this, I summarized it a bit, but in your own words, Rich, how did this come about? I touched on the demand that you had with some of your employees and some of the issues you're having. Can you just explain to the board in your own words why you're looking to build any residential units here?
Well, I mean, first, it's an interesting layout of commercial being on residential and vice versa, so getting the zoning correct for the usage is helpful. But as we interview and look to hire people, a lot of them are either commuting long distances or do not have a place to stay. So the housing demand is pretty high. I mean, we could literally fill 3 of those immediately with current employees that are looking for a place to live. And I literally was asked on Friday or Thursday of last week, if I knew a place for someone to live. So it's not uncommon for me to get asked this question once a month.
Okay. And I handed out actually a rendering. Obviously, it's not going to be exact, but in terms of the aesthetics, you're looking to design something that looks nice at that location, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, the neighborhood itself, like you said earlier, with the single-family homes, the advantage to the townhome is it has a single entrance for each living space, and that keeps in with the look and enhancing the whole corner. I think it would improve it a lot.
Okay. And the application that was in front of the board a year ago, just for this lot, took access off of Coventry, but this plan has access off of Second, correct?
Yes, yes.
And then there would be a shared reciprocal parking easement in place, so individuals would be able to park in any of these 18 spots that lived in the 6 townhomes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Larry's plan, and you'll get into this, has a note about the installation of a underground stormwater basin, but you'll work with the township if you get zoning relief to obviously meet all of their requirements with your stormwater design at this site, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. And then I'm assuming, again, you're still of the opinion that you were a year ago about the difficulty of just developing a third of a acre lot with commercial with truck access.
Yes, very difficult.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that this would have a negative impact on any of the surrounding businesses or homes in the community here?
No, I don't.
Okay. I have nothing else for Rich. If it's the board's pleasure, again, I have some testimony from Larry. If we could go through that and then open it up globally for questions, or unless you want to.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Zober at this time?
Well, the question I have is, let's presume you rezone the property to R3, and you weren't trying to put up 6 townhomes. Could you build a single house on the lot
Yes,
without variances?
yes,
And could you put 1 or 2 townhomes up theoretically without variances?
no,
But could you put an apartment building up without variances?
it's multifamily, so I'd have to take a look at what the design for that would be. But I think,
But the point is, you'd be able to put up a single-family house, or maybe 2, without variances.
yes, I think you could probably put up 1 or 2 single-family homes there.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Zober? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
These are just photographs around the site, the 3 roads that are front.
Thank you.
And Mr. Fetterman, I was just confirming, in the R3 district, single-family detached and multifamily are permitted uses.
Right.
Now, again, the one lot is zoned commercial, but the .83 acre lot is zoned multifamily. Again, for the reasons stated, we think that a townhome development is better than an apartment
No, I
development
understand. I'm just
there.
trying to,
Yeah, just to be, for clarity, those are 2 permitted uses,
and I
correct?
knew that, so
Yeah.
you would need a use variance to put up townhomes, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Sworn in, Larry?
Two.
All right, good evening, Mr. Young. Can you please state your name and where you're employed to the board?
Yeah, Larry Young, Y-O-U-N-G. I'm employed by Tri-State Engineers and Land Surveyors.
All right. And you hold a professional engineering license, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you prepared the plan that's before the board this evening?
yes.
All right. Can you just take a minute at the beginning and just walk through, I did a summary, so I don't need to belabor it, but the existing conditions on the site, and then Bob, if you don't mind
Yeah.
flipping back to that.
I think all the way. Yeah, right there. So basically, this commercial lot that we're talking about, that's vacant. It's been vacant since probably 2015, but it showed a single-family house on it since the 80s, I believe. I just couldn't get a real clear picture of it, so I gave you the 2010 and 2015 version that still show the house on it. The R3 lot, again, the ground cover is stone, grass, concrete, paving. There's a little bit of everything on this lot. There's concrete pads out here. There's the house that Mike referenced, the dual-use building right here. There's a gravel area and a paved area, and this is grass and gravel back here. Again, that's the uses that Mike Rano went over previously.
Okay, and then just briefly, because we're talked about how this is different than what was presented previously. Just touch on the difference between this application, even with this site that we're looking to develop.
Can you go to towards the end? Have the original plan that we submitted. One more. Okay, this was the original plan that we submitted back in last year. We were only putting 3 townhouses on the vacant lot. It had a shared parking lot. It accessed Coventry Road or Avenue. We found out Coventry Avenue is only 15 to 16 feet wide. No matter what use is put on it, it'd be very hard to, you can't get 2 cars to pass in each direction at the same time. So definitely when we looked at the commercial side of things, you have UPS trucks, you have delivery trucks like that. They weren't going to come up this steeper driveway. They were going to park right there, which was going to block this roadway from two-way traffic. And this was the only, this was what we proposed under that current situation. If you could go back to like the 3rd slide, right there, right there. So as you can see, where this whole front area, it's 6 townhouses, clusters of 3. Still got the shared parking lot. This time we're coming out to 2nd Street Pike. That was, we met with the township staff in November 30th, I think, where we kicked around some ideas. We let them know about the inadequacy of the Coventry Avenue. So we made a decision to come out to 2nd Avenue. And that is 26 feet wide. It's adequate for 2-way traffic. And Magnolia is 26 feet wide. So that's what we were proposing on the residential side. And Mike went over, we're proposing a bigger parking lot. You saw that one slide where all the cars were parked all over the place. Partly in the right-of-way, on the roadsides. So this will give them added parking down here. And there's a long driveway right here.
Okay. And we're adding green space to a portion of the site and installing stormwater management facilities. Can you touch on the impervious situation, I'm going to say on the corner, the commercial vehicle storage use on the corner of 2nd and Coventry and what that's like right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of impervious here, as you can see. We're taking away some of the pervious, but we're putting a parking lot in. There will be a underground stormwater facility right in this area. It all drains this way, and then we'll discharge out into the storm system on Magnolia. As far as the upper part goes, there's kind of a ridge line right through here where the property, some of the property drains towards Coventry, some drain back here. Anything draining back here will go into the underground basin over here. There's going to be an elongated facility under the parking lot, and that will drain and slowly release down Coventry Avenue.
And I'm assuming that's a large improvement versus the existing conditions for stormwater runoff?
Yeah, there are no stormwater facilities on site.
Okay.
So.
In terms of the variances, I sort of gave a summary at the outset. Can you just explain why we have the batch of variances that we need for the townhome use here? Just big picture.
Yeah, when we're talking about single-family houses in a residential zone, usually have separation between, it's called side yard setbacks. With townhouses, the middle unit, and even the end units, but in towards the middle, don't have any separation. So automatically, when you propose townhouses where a zoning district says side yard setbacks, you're not gonna be able to meet them because you can't, there's no way to eliminate the center section of a townhome.
Okay. And then things, for example, like density and lot size are, again, because it's not envisioning in the R3 necessarily townhome use. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes.
Okay. I covered at the beginning kind of the batch of commercial variances from, I'm going to say, the more commercial uses and how most of those are pre-existing conditions. Just briefly, if you can affirm or cover the loading or the parking or the buffer issues that we've technically asked for relief from.
Bob, can you put the first slide up? One more. So a lot of the issues, these buildings are right on the roadway, right up close to the roadway. So they have inadequate front yards on them. Even this side has inadequate front yards. This house that's here, this has inadequate side and rear yards. And then because we're creating a lot line, it's going to separate the residential from commercial. You need buffer zones. Anytime you have unlike uses, higher density uses, you're going to need buffers. Quite frankly, it exists today. The commercial use and the residential use all coexist on the lot. And as far as loading, there are no loading zones designated on here. They just pull in wherever there's space free, and you know, that's when they do. I assume that they get car parts from Parts Warehouse. They're smaller cars that deliver these parts to R&D. So.
Okay. And Larry, you handed a packet of pictures up to the zoning hearing board. Some of these are self-explanatory, like the conditions on Coventry, but if there's anything that you want to highlight as part of this application, obviously, please do.
Yeah, if the first photo says it all. That's only 15.5 feet wide, Coventry. That's why we're avoiding it. The third picture shows the storage yard that's going to be eliminated. The fourth picture is at the corner of Coventry Avenue and 2nd Avenue. And the fifth photograph is the same thing from a different angle. The sixth photo shows there's a blue residential dwelling that needs to be taken down. It's not structurally sound, and we'll be removing that along with the pavement, the driveway there, and the steps and the walkway. The next photo shows a picture of Mika Machine and R&D, and you can see how close the buildings are to the road. That's not even the property line, that's just the road itself. And the next photo, you can see they're parking all over the place, in grass areas, cars hanging out onto the roadway, things like that, so.
Okay. And then you have the last picture's the aerial, Larry. As we discussed and as has been touched on, obviously most of the non-commercial uses on the strip on Cedar are single-family. With what we're proposing, are you aware of any reason why 2 clusters of 3 townhomes would be detrimental to the surrounding community or any of the businesses?
No.
Okay. I have nothing further from Mr. Young at this time.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Young?
I have a question. So you moved the entrance from Coventry to Second Ave,
Yes,
and the issue with Coventry is it's narrow.
very.
What's to avoid people from coming out Second Ave and going back down Coventry to Cedar?
Well, they're gonna take their life in their hands because you can't see where the buttress walls are to the railroad track.
Right.
You can't see a car until it's right on top of you.
Can that be made a one-way or something?
We
avoid
could,
that?
we could probably do just, left-hand turns out of the driveway and sign it that way.
Yeah.
That corner is bad, right
Yeah,
under the bridge.
yeah.
That's
The
really
old,
bad.
the old design required access from Coventry, this doesn't at least, so again, it's not perfect, but it's
But
a
you know
step.
people are gonna take the shortest distance to get
Yeah,
to where
by
they're gonna go.
combining the lots, we were only, looking at the one commercial lot before. By us combining the lots, it gives us that access to Second Street, or Second Ave.
Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Colleen.
Hi, are these gonna be rental units or owner occupied?
I believe they're gonna start out as rental units, that'd probably be a question for Rich.
Come on up to the microphone, please, Mr. Zober.
Yes, they would be rentals, rental units.
How many bedrooms in each unit?
Well, the floor plans that we looked at would be 2 or 3,
Will they have basements?
no basement.
It's about a 630 square foot footprint, so it's 2 stories, so it's a little over 1,200 square feet.
Correct.
That was my next question. Other than that, that was all I had. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I think what you're proposing is way better than what's there. I just want to share that.
And if I can, just to put a cap on my presentation and a bit of argument just at the end, it is possible, we're not here saying it's impossible to develop an R3 property, which is the one with the commercial uses, but there's already 5 different uses on site. And I think having 3 townhomes on that piece and 3 on the adjacent is a better use and more consistent with the neighborhood than a multifamily. I just think it's a better project for the township.
Let me ask you a question. What you're proposing in this township, 6 clusters, 3 clusters, have you seen anything that's in this township that compares to this?
I don't know, I'm not aware.
Not
off
in the immediate area, yeah.
Because at one point behind St. Thomas Aquinas Church, they were proposing the same kind of townhouses behind there. So.
Right, but I think some of the preconceptions about townhomes and the impact of townhomes on property values and things have been shown to be inaccurate over time. And I acknowledged multiple times that as part of this, that this is a single-family detached, R3 is single-family detached, but it's also multifamily. And I think townhomes are splitting the difference, and certainly aesthetically and in terms of density, it's not we're eliminating 2 houses, we're eliminating a commercial use, we're not adding a significant amount of density, we're not adding traffic as part of this. I would argue it's just an aesthetic distinction between single-family homes there or apartments and townhomes, and we know that there's demand for this.
Can you explain to me what the hardship is here?
There's a lot of hardship.
Okay. Let me hear them.
Sure. So the commercially zoned lot we discussed and was discussed at the last hearing, it's almost prohibitive to develop in a commercial manner. It's 15 feet in width. It's difficult to access in terms of truck traffic, in terms of box trucks, in terms of deliveries. So it is very difficult to reasonably develop a 1/3 of an acre. The other Zober-owned property at least has depth because I think it's 7 acres off the top of my head. So even trucks that are accessing on Coventry to get down to Zober's other piece have the ability to make different turning maneuvers and turning templates that they can't make on a third of an acre property. There's a reason it was residential, and there's a reason why it hasn't been developed in the last 7 or 8 years. The hardship on the R3 property, I think, speaks for itself on its face. It is irregularly shaped, clearly. It still has access issues off of Coventry. It's comprised of 5 separate uses on the site in its present condition. You can continue to utilize the site presently as it is situated, but Larry's already testified to some of the challenging dynamics with the pre-existing non-conforming condition with some of the commercial and industrial uses. And there's no way to remedy the situation without removing existing structures, without reconfiguring the parking. So anything that is going to fix the situation here is going to require, I think, some sort of zoning relief unless you just delete and don't replace any of the commercial uses. So I think this application certainly meets MPC requirements for unique physical characteristics, existing uses, and the like.
But once you have the lots reconfigured, meaning commercial becomes R3, R3 becomes commercial, now you have a different scenario. And I think what the chairman's asking is, what's the hardship once you make that conversion? Why do you have to have 6 townhomes on a residential lot when you can have a single house or 2? It comes down to economics.
Well, I mean, cost is obviously a component of it, certainly.
But that doesn't create a hardship.
Well, it depends. No, it doesn't create a hardship. The hardship exists for other reasons still. But it is a factor that goes into things. The second note that I would make, as was discussed, is the R3 district permits multifamily. Like, we can build multifamily if the township thinks that's a better use here, if we eliminate.
Not really the issue. The issue is you want to use variance, and do you meet the hardship standard for that lot once it's converted to residential?
Yeah, but that's a hypothetical. That's like saying what happens if a tenant comes in later and what's the impact of that. The current situation is this is R3 and that's commercial. I would submit that case law is clear. The zoning hearing board has to consider the facts as they are situated presently with the application. And the present dynamic is you have a residentially zoned lot with 5 different uses, 3 of which are commercial, 2 are residential. You have a vacant commercial lot that can't reasonably be developed in a commercial manner. So I think saying, well, you know, at a later date.
Well, in fairness, the whole application's hypothetical then. I mean, you're in front of the board saying we want to change the zoning on these 2 lots. That's hypothetical. So now we're looking at the lots as they're changed.
Okay, but we can go round and round on that because I can say we aren't going to change the zoning. We're doing that to try to make the situation better, the township, by changing the zoning. That's argument falls apart.
You're probably worse off if you don't change the zoning.
Correct. Okay. So I could say we're not here to change the zoning, and then we can't make that argument.
You're changing the zoning to make it more palatable. I'm not trying to argue with you, but you want the relief you want, and the board has to decide if they want to grant it.
Understood.
And even with a single would still have to access Coventry, which is an unsafe situation. There's got to be a driveway out there to 1 or 2 of the singles.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Is that all you got?
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Bob?
Just to touch on it, Jim, this property's been, I mean, as it sits now, it's a code enforcement nightmare. There's pending citations on the property, and for it to be cleaned up would be great for that area.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment. Anybody from the audience? Okay. All right, I need some kind of motion.
I'll put a motion for it.
I need a second.
I'll second.
All right. Call the board.
Gerard Lycon.
Yes.
Mark DeMarcus.
Yes.
Jim McMahon.
No.
Colleen Dunn.
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes.
There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, who's next? Let's see here.
You're gonna be stuck with me for a little while,
Aaron
sorry
Daniel
about that.
Yan, 3714 Genesis Drive, Philadelphia, PA. Come on up.
All right. First of all, got a present for Mr. Fetterman.
Thank you. One of those perfect Begley Carlin packets.
Oh, sorry.
I got it. Thank you, sir.
Good to go? All right.
Good to go.
All right, good evening. Yeah. I don't want to step on any toes here.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Board. Bryce McGuigan here from Begley Carlin on behalf of the property owner and applicant, Karen Daniel Yan, the owner of the property located at 3535 Newportville Road here in Bristol. The property itself consists of approximately 0.74 acres and it is presently unimproved, although there was a single-family modular home there at one point. Karen purchased the property in 2021 with the intent of building his home there. As you can see based on the plans submitted, what I would say we're proposing here is a very modestly sized single-family detached dwelling with a lap pool, patio, some accessory off-street parking for Karen's family's vehicles. Even though the proposed footprint of the home is, as I would submit, rather reasonable, only about 2,300 square feet, we need a variety of variances as a result of the fact that a majority of the property sits within the floodplain. Specifically, the rear part of the property, majority of the property, sits within the 100-year flood level. Now, before I begin discussing the project in more detail, I want to be clear. We are not proposing any development within the floodplain. We are not proposing any development within the floodplain. We are not proposing any disturbance of that area. Our surveyor, Mikhail Zavyazkin, who is here with us today, that's Zavyazkin. You're welcome. Our surveyor took a look and actually calculated the distance, because when you look at the FEMA website, and actually here, we already have the plan up there, so let me explain. So the lot itself is somewhat unusually shaped. There's a very large rear area, which is all within the floodplain. Specifically, the FEMA line is the line I'm tracing right here, and that's just based on geomapping. They actually didn't go out to the property. Mikhail did. And if you look at the line that he measured, which I'm tracing here, fortunately, that leaves us with a buildable site and allows us to build a single-family home on the property. I've had conversations with the township engineer. The township is aware of that, no issues, and we also know that we have to go through the permitting process, which, because of the natural conditions on the site, is going to be a little bit more detailed than your average bear, I would submit. But even though we're not developing within the floodplain, the existence of the floodplain on site complicates things a little bit, namely because it reduces the amount of net site area we have for calculations of impervious surface, building coverage, as well as our setbacks. Significantly, we're asking for 3 variances. The first is for impervious surface of 53.9%, where 40 is otherwise allowed. The second is 33.2% building coverage, where you can only build 30. And the last is to permit setbacks to be measured from the property lines rather than the limit of the natural resources. And the reason for this is very clear. When you actually look at the gross site area, the 0.74 acres, we're only developing 7.1% building coverage and 12% impervious, but of course, we can't use a majority of the site when you factor out right-of-way and when you factor out natural resources. So even though the total numbers are rather small, the numbers for the purpose of today are a little larger, hence the need for the variances. So in light of all that, like I said, we're confident that there's going to be no safety or stormwater flooding issues associated with the development. So confident that sitting here in the front row is the gentleman whose family is going to be living at the house, knock on wood, if we get the relief that we're asking for here tonight. For the purposes of tonight, I have three people with me. I've got the applicant and the hopefully the homeowner. I also have our surveyor, Michael Zaviaskin, and I also have a neighboring property owner, Mr. Charles Becker, who with his wife has owned our property for many years, and they still live next door. And Mr. Becker will be more than happy to provide some testimony to support our surveyor's finding, just anecdotally, that the property really doesn't have any flooding concerns in the particular area where we are intending to develop. So unless there's any preliminary questions, at this point I'd like to offer Michael Zaviaskin's testimony by way of a proffer that I think may be appropriate in this particular situation.
Anybody have any questions real quick or no? All right.
All right, perfect, thank you. So Michael Zaviaskin is a licensed surveyor in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with decades of experience testifying throughout Bucks County and right here in Bristol Township as well. Michael designed the plans you see before you tonight. He would confirm that the lot is approximately 0.74 acres and is generally a buildable lot. Michael would confirm all the statements that I gave to the board earlier this evening, that it fronts Newportville Road, and when you factor out the right-of-way together with the areas for natural resources, which are entirely the floodplain, that when you factor those out, we require variances from building coverage, impervious surface, and setbacks in order to reasonably develop the lot. Michael would confirm that if we do not receive relief specifically related to the setbacks, that you would be left with a completely unbuildable lot due to the fact that when you have his line here along the rear of the property, you need to take 20 feet off of that, plus 25 feet from the front, and you would be left with a completely unbuildable building envelope, and that would essentially result in a condemnation of the lot. Importantly, what Michael would testify to is that he personally went out and did calculations and observed the 100-year flood level, and that our proposed dwelling will not be within that level, and that our proposed dwelling will be safe to live in, safe to inhabit, safe to build, and it will not raise the flood level or anything like that. What Michael would also confirm is he's ready to obviously help Karen during the land development, during the permitting process in order to comply with township directives, work with the township engineer to confirm that we are building a safe and secure home that won't have any flood or stormwater concerns. So with that, Michael, you might come up.
I do. Hello. I will probably this back.
Michael, have you had a chance to listen to the comments I made to the board?
Yes.
Did you understand everything I said?
Yes.
Do you agree with it all?
Yes.
All right. If I asked you to change anything, is there anything you'd like to change?
No.
All right. Would you be willing to adopt my statements to the board as your testimony here this evening?
Yes.
All right. And if the board has any questions, obviously, they'll be more than happy to answer those, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So if the board has any questions for our expert, please.
No, none for me. He's accepted as an expert.
I appreciate that. Thanks again.
Anybody?
I have a question. You have I call it a guardrail, so on the permit, it's a guide rail in front of the property?
Yes.
And looking at the property, the guide rail, we'll call it, is in the driveway. Is that to be moved? Is that a PennDOT issue, or?
That's been that, yes. Yes, but we have to do some little changes because we need to protect this property a little bit better than this guide rail.
Yeah, we know we're gonna have to work with PennDOT to make some tweaks. This is an area where there's a bit of a curve, and we know that's one of the factors at play. And I think that combined with the floodplain is one of the reasons, probably two of the reasons, why the property was on the market for so long. But Karen is aware of that and willing to put the legwork in to make sure all of these issues are addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, thanks, man. Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
So with that, I'd like to call up Mr. Becker. Mr. Becker, do me a favor. Can you introduce yourself to the board and tell them where you live?
My name is Charles Becker. I live at 3605 Lower Road.
About where is that in relation to this home?
It's right adjacent to the property, next door.
All right, and did you used to own this property, you and your wife?
Yes.
All right. Does it have, specifically with regard to the floodplain to the rear, are there any stormwater concerns, flooding concerns? What have you seen in all your years of ownership?
Well, my father-in-law has owned the property since 1976 or 78. I've been involved with it since then with him. We now own it. And we've never had any really, the water has come up to the house, but our property is built, a small portion of the front of the property, then it drops down. So it's mainly the sub-basement is down in that area. And the water comes up and hits the sub-basement wall. It never gets into the basement.
So if I'm pointing out right here, is that your house that I'm pointing to?
Yes, yes.
All right, and there's, fair to say, there's a bit of a hill here, is that right?
Right.
All right, and your house, part of your house is kind of on the bottom side of the hill, is that right?
A good 80% of that.
Right. And if we're, based on the map, based on the plan here that Michael prepared, we're trying to build our house on the top side of the hill. Have you ever seen water get up that high?
No.
No? And you've been living there for about how long?
I've been there, right, I've been dealing with that property since 78. Right. When they bought it, whenever they bought it. Me and my wife got married in 80. And we just recently moved up here about 6 years ago when my in-laws got ill to take care of both of them. And once they passed on, the house was left to my wife and she wanted to stay there. I wanted to go to Florida, but I didn't win, so here I am. Yeah. I'm still fighting that battle.
All right, well, we wish you the best of luck, but in the meantime, thank you very much for being here, and just want to confirm.
If you want to, I have a picture if you want to see the picture of water, last flood.
Well, yeah.
If you'd like to see it.
No, we appreciate that.
If I can find it now, I told you I had it, right?
We're holding it to you now. All right.
That's our this is all sub-basement here.
All right. Would the board care to see? And this is your home, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. So, if you look at the picture, it doesn't quite reach the foundation. And for the record, Mr. Becker's home is a little bit down on the hill, or to be up on top of it. All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay. All right, I don't have any more questions for Mr. Becker, but if the board does, we'll be more than happy to address those.
Any questions for Mr. Becker? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles, appreciate it.
And good luck with that Florida thing, too, by the way.
So with that, I have the property owner in attendance if the board has any questions, but otherwise, we do not have any additional evidence to present.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Going once, going twice. Bob? Anybody from the audience? Any public comments for or against this project? Okay, hit me with it. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion for.
I'll second.
Call the board, please.
Gerard Lycon.
Yes.
Mark DeMarcus.
Yes.
Tim McMahon.
Yes.
Colleen Dunn.
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
That's good. He's on fire.
Good evening again, board. Bryce McWigan back for Southside Auto Hub LLC. South Side is the current tenant of 1606 Manning Boulevard, Suite D. The overall property is about an acre and a half, sits in the M2 heavy industrial district, but specifically our unit is one of 5 that cover about 28,000 square feet of space. Irfan Isaac is the owner of Southside Auto and has been operating an auto body repair and detailing shop for several years right here in Bristol Township. As you can see from the pictures right here that are up on the screen, the projector, the unit we're talking about, specifically, it's an interior unit. And Bob, can you go to the next page for me? All right. It's located right here where I'm showing you. This is a prior tenant. And actually, if we go to the next page, this is us now. There we go. So previously, it was home to an auto repair shop that actually had a sales component to it. When Mr. Isaac acquired the property through a lease, and when he started his own business, at that point it was a burgeoning business. So he wanted to keep his eye on the ball, keep his purpose, kind of narrow purpose, and he was only focusing on auto repair and detailing. Over the years, his business has been successful, and what he'd like to do is have an accessory sales component with his business. Apparently, like I said, the prior auto shop had that sort of component, and we would like to do the same thing. To be clear, we are not proposing your standard used car business where you're going to see cars sitting here in the front of the lot with nice big stickers and giant writing on it, advertising to the world. Essentially, what Mr. Isaac would like to do is to take certain vehicles that he repairs and perhaps sell them on eBay or online or through word of mouth. There's going to be no display of vehicles. There's going to be no external marketing of vehicles. This is essentially a paper application. You know, everything's going to look the same. There will be no other modifications to the building, interior or exterior. There's already designated waiting areas. There's already designated office space. And to the rear, Bob, if you could switch to the next page for me. To the rear, it's already an empty, fenced-in lot where his vehicles will go. Again, this is going to be the type of thing where you drive by and you don't even know it's there. It just allows Mr. Isaac to better use the property in a way that other competitors are in the local area. In order to do this, we do need one variance, which is to allow auto sales as an accessory use to the existing auto repair facility, because this is an industrial property and that's more akin to a retail or a commercial use. That's why we need the variance to have that as an accessory use. So, like I said, it was previously used for auto sales, and we would just like to continue what was previously there. And this is an existing established business now, and we're just trying to keep it that way and keep it humming.
And
So
the conditions that you expressed, meaning the amount of cars out front, basically internet sales and other media-driven sales.
correct, we can happily agree to those conditions.
You've put them on the record, but they will be conditions if granted.
That is perfectly acceptable to us, and actually, I believe, even to, hold the applicant's feet to the fire even more, there is a restriction based upon how close you can display any vehicles with respect to a property line. You can't do it within a setback.
This proposal's in front of us before, so, I mean, it's a little tongue-in-cheek to say, I've driven bodies before that we proposed the same thing, and now there's cars out in the lot that are not supposed to be there. But, so what makes you think your client won't do the same thing?
So a couple things. It's kind of tough if you ask me. Bob, can you go back to the very first page for me? This is not really your typical auto sales facility, I might say. First of all, this is for everyone familiar with the area, it's an industrial park. You don't get a whole lot of through traffic, and you don't get a whole lot of public visibility. We also, it's not like we're even an end unit where you can put cars out in a high visibility place. We are in the middle here. You can barely even see the unit from where we're sitting here from this vantage point. Bob, can we go to the next page? And if you look here, our unit is what I'm showing you right here. There's essentially 3 parking spots, and then you have the bay door. You're very, very limited in what you can do in this particular spot. So I understand the board's potential concern, but I think even if there was the intent This property wouldn't be the property
So
for
I'm
that.
not gonna ride by there and there's not gonna be a car on the corner of that property with a for sale sign on it from your client.
Not from my client. Maybe there's somebody else. I don't know.
What's the maximum number of cars he's gonna have out there?
Irvine, why don't you come up? Come on up.
Do you swear that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do me a favor. Introduce yourself to the board. Tell them who you are.
How you guys doing tonight? My name is Ifan Isaac. I am the business owner at 1606 Manning Boulevard, Suite D, Southside Auto Hub.
All right. And to clean things up a little bit, you heard everything I said to the board, right?
Yes.
All right. You agree with it all?
Yes.
Is there anything that you would change?
None whatsoever.
All right. Do you agree to adopt that as your testimony here this evening?
I do.
All right. Now, you heard Mr. Fetterman's question. You heard Mr. McMahon's concerns. Are you planning to display any vehicles outside, any vehicles for sale?
None whatsoever.
All right.
To be quite honest. Once I got in this property, I understand the concerns with, just cars anywhere posted up for sale. It was all over the place. I mean, the last almost 4 years, I would say, I tried everything to clean up the property, essentially. I mean, as hard as it was, it still is. It's like a daily reminder to the business owners next door to me, keep the junk out of here. I don't want to be associated with anybody next to me. I don't want to deal with anything. I've been trying to organize, clean up, and, I believe I did a great job, to be honest with you, with the property as it was currently standing at that moment. So no, I don't, I'm sorry. Not to answer your question, I don't plan on putting anything outside for sale. I don't even want traffic like that at my shop. Like I still try to keep a low-key type operation,
So if anyone drives by this building here, are they going to see a car out there in front of your shop with the for sale sign on it?
No.
Are they going to see any vehicles with prices put on the windows?
No.
All right. In fact, how many parking spots do you have out in front of your shop generally?
I'd say about at least 8. But that's mostly for employee parking, essentially, for us,
And if someone's dropping off a vehicle to
Yes,
repair,
that's
correct?
customer parking as well, yes.
Where do you expect to hold or store any vehicles you have for sale?
Out back, so the property has space out back as well. Like I said, when I first got there, it was cars everywhere. It was hard to keep people out of my section of the property, essentially. So we just closed it off and got permission from the landlord, and just essentially to clean up the property itself, so it didn't look like, this, that, and the third everywhere.
If you receive approval tonight, about how many vehicles would you expect to sell, let's say, at any given time? How many vehicles would you have on your property that would be for sale type vehicles?
For sale, I'd like to house at least 10 to 20 out back, essentially. And that could be, cars to be worked on, customer cars for sale, essentially. So whatever I have, essentially, my inventory and everything like that would be out back for the most part.
And that's total vehicles, correct?
Total vehicles, yes.
Okay. So you don't intend on transforming this into Southside Auto Sales, you're not going to see billboards for you or anything like that,
No,
correct?
no.
All right. And you'd be willing, if the board does grant you relief, to put an explicit condition that you can't have any vehicles displayed outside, you can't have any for sale signs outside, any sort of anything soliciting sales. You'll agree to that, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. And any other conditions that the board deems appropriate in order to hold you and I to our word tonight? Fair?
Fair.
All right. If the board has any questions for Mr. Isaac?
Anybody? Any questions? Yeah, we'll get to you, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, the applicant would rest.
All right, Bob, anything? All right, come on up, sir.
Hello, my name is Jerry Govero, and I own a property at 1611 Manning Boulevard. He's a very nice gentleman. I'm glad to see that he wants to come
Swearing
here.
in?
But on my, oh, I was already, but go ahead. I'll swear in again. I'll swear in again.
Oh, he did, okay, sorry.
It's been a constant battle with all these cars. I'm glad some of these people know. I don't even know if that's a street, because I can't find a street name off of that. So, originally, I thought he was on the very end, And that's just cluttered with big trucks, not small, not cars. I don't know if he's gonna be doing trucks or not. There's constantly on 1611 in front of my building, I don't know how long, 5, 10 years, there's constantly big trucks right in front of my building, so it makes it hard to rent. And they're there so long that I call the police and their inspections have worn out, and then they tag them and then they get rid of them, but then another one comes in. I have pictures here. I went there Friday to take pictures, and I got a picture of a trailer that's been there for months and months and months. Well, this morning it was gone. They saw me taking pictures. I guess they knew I was coming today. I asked the township here for some type help for a sign or something. I could see somebody parking there for a couple hours to unload and that, but it's months and months, and I have pictures. But this other, he's down a couple bays, not, I don't know, it's terrible there. Some of you have seen it there, and I tried to do something years ago, nothing happened. I got the letter in the mail, and I thought he was on the end bay, and I have pictures if you just want to see them for the heck of it.
A little frustrated, is that what you're telling us?
Oh, yeah, it's like, I understand I probably don't have any rights to tell people you can't park on the street, but good God, they stay there forever. I'll bet anybody here, $10, that if you go on the internet, you'll find Google, you'll find something there, a boat, a truck, a tractor trailer, something in front of my building, every day. If you Google, you'll see it. I don't know what you'll see, but you'll see something there. And the other, when you come off with this gentleman's place is at, and when there's a truck there, it's just a little hard. Not that they can't make a right or a left.
Is that a boat in front of your?
Yeah, but that's not my problem. I'm right across the street. I'm down to 1611.
So your boat, is it? No. So is that your property?
No, I owe you $10.
I see that. Okay. Thank you, sir.
And-
I'll get it off you later.
And actually, I can probably provide a little bit of detail on that. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name earlier.
Jerry Govero.
Hey, pleasure. So another one of my clients actually has property back there, and those roads, they're technically private streets. They're not accepted or dedicated to the township. And essentially, there's a certain width right of way that you're guaranteed. And if anyone's parking trucks or trailers or boats and that gets into the right of way, technically, they're not allowed to do that. And you could explore your legal remedies to get them to move that. So technically speaking, you do have a right to it, even though it's not my client doing it. So that's something where you might not be out of luck, but it might be something where you might have to look into.
You know, it's like, some things are common decency. I could sit on 2 chairs here and nobody else could sit there. But it's common decency. Now, Mr. Fulford's here for something totally different, and he rents property on the same street, so he may testify that there's constantly there. I don't know. Thank you, I'm done.
Anybody else? Sure. Okay. All right. Anybody else from the audience? No? Anybody from board have any other questions? Okay, hit me with it. I need a motion.
I'll give a motion for it.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Call the board, please.
Gerard Lycon.
Yes.
Mark DeMarcus.
Yes.
Jim McMahon.
Yes.
Colleen Dunn.
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes.
Okay,
Good luck.
there you go. Two.
2 for 2, 3's adjourned.
Burn up all their yeses.
All right, last but not least. Larry Fulford, 522 Stanford Road, Fairless Hills. Come on up, please.
You're moving a little fast for me.
Surprise, Sergeant Carter.
Can't get rid of me yet. guess I have a packet for you. Actually, did I forget to give you the last one?
You gave me the last one.
I did? All right.
They did, I don't know. Yes, you did. Hold on. Yeah. You gave me the last one. I did. You gave it to me, yeah. In the very beginning.
I'm good, thank you. You good?
Yeah, you're good.
Proceed.
All right. Good evening again, Board. Bryce McWigan from Begley Carlin, here this time on behalf of Larry Fulford, who is the equitable owner of the vacant lot along Levittown Parkway that sits in between the Church of Jesus Christ and the Lower Bucks Church of Christ. I'm sure the Board may remember that Mr. Fulford was here approximately 2 months ago to seek relief to move his landscaping business to a property, a separate property. And there were a few members of the community who were interested in that application, who had some concerns, and ultimately the board took those concerns, and we're here today for a separate property now. No hard feelings, because this property itself, honestly, we think is a much better fit for the business. The property itself, like I mentioned, sits along Levittown Parkway. If you look here at the very first page of our presentation, it is a 1.88 acre vacant piece of property that, again, sits right in between those, the row of churches, if anyone's familiar, just south of where the parkway meets New Falls Road. And technically speaking, this piece of property here, like I said, it's 1.88 acres and is presently zoned as R2 residential. It's been vacant forever. It's just an overgrown vacant lot. And again, I think part of the reason why it hasn't been developed is because this designation R2 doesn't really leave you with many uses that would make sense on a property like this. I don't really think that single-family homes sitting here fronting Levittown Parkway makes a lot of sense. You could also have a school or a library, some sort of municipal use, or you could have a church. And I'm not sure what the appropriate church density is, but I think we're a little past it here with 4 separate churches right along that strip right there. So anyhow, it sits along a divided highway. There are, unlike...
Guys, please.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, unlike the last time we were here, access through this is not through a residential development, passing multiple homes through narrow streets that have a weight limit on it. This one's through, it's a right in, right out, Levittown Parkway, very standard access, and there are 0 residences that border this particular property. We have a church on one side, church on the other side, township property to the rear, and in fact, I believe the only residences that got notified pursuant to the 200-foot rule are in Holly Hill, which is right across Levittown Parkway. So this particular site makes a whole lot of sense for a variety of reasons. In pertinent part, if the board may recall, Larry's business is very, very simple. He operates a lawn and landscape service. They do landscaping, hardscaping, and lawn care. It's residential, commercial, homeowners associations with a little bit of industrial wrapped in. He only has 12 employees. They carpool to and from the site. They work in teams, typically 3 or 4 to a vehicle. So you only get about 3 or 4 vehicles leaving and coming back at the end of the day. No one's going to work there full time. And generally speaking, no contract work will be done on the property. Not going to be publicly accessible. This is a nice, quiet use that would fit very well with these 2 churches. You're not going to burden Levittown Parkway with a lot of traffic. You're not going to interfere with when these churches have services, which will be offset by times when Larry's business works. Even if he's got a crew coming in or out, you're not going to notice it because it might just be one. That's it. Also, this sits, if anyone's familiar with the area, there's a bit of a hump in the road right here that poses potentially an issue with visibility. So you wouldn't really want something that's a more dense or impactful use where people are coming and going and you might have people coming to the site who aren't familiar with it. So this particular use fits very, very well in this area, I would submit. Bob, can you go to the next slide for me? Also, from a visual perspective, we plan on making this look fairly nice, I would say, especially compared with what's there now. The general plan is approximately the same as the last time, where we're going to have a large graveled over area that's going to have fencing surrounding it, and you're going to have evergreen green giants right around the fence. Larry, obviously, as any good landscaper would do, plans on maintaining and making sure this site looks quite a bit nicer than it does now, which we've heard from one of the local churches. Apparently, there's issues with potential squatters and potential homeless encampment there. There are, what we've uncovered and we have pictures of, there's a couch and some wicker furniture and some other related accessories that are there from apparently a prior resident. So what we hope is that our business is going to be a little better for the community than the existing lot. Bob, can we go to the next page too? Thank you. So the general layout's going to be about the same. It's going to be a large gravel enclosure. You have fencing all around. There's actually going to be a stormwater detention basin to the rear. And the existing vehicles you see generally rendered here, we only have about 7 or 8. There's some existing sheds that are going to go on the side. They're the same sheds that we saw a couple months ago. The only difference here, there's 2. Larry proposes to install a pole barn on this site. It's a little larger and can accommodate the barn. We have the detention basin to the rear, and there's going to be a slightly larger access point that's proposed. Bob, could we go to the next one, please? Thank you. We've got to zoom out a little. This one's a little... Yeah, so this here is our site plan, and this is going to show pretty well what the proposal is, and I'm going to go through the variances, because there are a few of them, but I would submit they all make a little bit of sense here. One requires a little bit of explanation. Bob, can we just zoom in a little bit on the main portion here? Thanks, I appreciate it. All right, so essentially to do this project and to move our business, we need 7 separate variances. First one relates to use. There's 2 that relate to impervious, but essentially those dovetail off each other. The 4th variance is for slope disturbance. 5th is for woodland disturbance. A 6th is a partial variance from buffering. And the 7th involves access to the site, access width. So to go through each of these individually. So the first one is use. So this is an R2 zone property. So the use of a contractor yard or a gravel storage yard is not allowed by ordinance. The only permitted uses as explicitly within the ordinance would be a house, church, school, library, some sort of municipal office, that sort of use. And for this particular lot, like I said, there's a reason why it's been vacant for so long. I mean, none of those really work here. Churches clearly work in the area, but I mean, how many churches can you have? We already have literally, I knew there were a lot. I did not know there were 4 along this stretch. So 5 would probably be a little bit of a tough haul there. So what we think is this particular use, as I explained earlier, will work generally very, very well amongst that particular stretch of roadway where you obviously have a more heavily trafficked road. You have an issue potentially with site distance where you wouldn't really want commercial. You also wouldn't want commercial intermittent with the churches, I would submit. I don't think the churches wouldn't like that Sunday mornings or Friday or Saturday evenings. And this particular use, again, it's only going to have 3 or 4 vehicles coming in the morning, 3 or 4 vehicles leaving, nothing happening all day, then about the same around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So very, very light use, something that, again, would fit in the area. Next, the second variance here is impervious surface. Now, there are 2 for impervious surface, and these I actually think I need to talk about a little bit because our formal request is for 120% impervious surface. Sounds like it's not possible. Let me explain how it is. Because our surveyor had to explain it to me. I'm not too ashamed to admit that. So generally speaking, the site is 1.88 acres. If we're basing our impervious surface off of the gross site area, 1.88 acres, we're at about 40%, but we can't do that. What we have to do is factor out certain elements to get your net number. So the first thing we have to factor out is the ultimate right-of-way. We lose 0.47 acres from the right-of-way. Next is we have to factor out slopes. We lose 0.15 acres for slopes. Last is we lose 0.62 acres for protected woodlands. So at the end of the day, instead of being able to base our impervious surface off of 1.89 acres, we are now stuck with basing it off of 0.65, which is a third. We're stuck with a third. So our total number is only about 40% of the total site area. However, based on what the ordinance requires, we're technically at 120%. So when you actually factor in the whole site, factor in what we're doing, also the fact it will be a gravel yard, we're not actually paving over. It's much more palatable, and even if the overall number might give a little bit of sticker shock at first glance. The second impervious surface variance just relates to the general impervious surface area. We're only about 0.22 acres. We're all asking for 0.77. So those are the two impervious surface variances are required. And obviously, we know that we're gonna have to go through land development after this, provided that we do receive approvals. And we know that pursuant to the ordinance, we need to capture every last bit of that stormwater that results from our development, and we need to keep that on our property. That's why we have this large detention basin to the rear. And what I would also say is this whole area behind us, it's a township open space, but we're going to use this particular area and any other area we have to use within our property in order to make sure that we satisfy the stormwater management concerns of the township. So that's not an issue. It's a 1.89 acre area, so there's plenty of space in order to capture and control our stormwater. The next variance relates to slope disturbance. There's approximately 0.2 acres worth of slopes on the property. We're requesting relief, and same relief you'd have to do for any development to be able to disturb some of those slopes in order to level out the property and actually have some sort of a reasonable use on the property. The slopes themselves, there's about 0.05 acres of steep slopes and 0.15 acres of moderate steep slopes, and you generally have to maintain most of those, 70 to 80%. So unfortunately, we can't do that, and we need to disturb the entirety of those 0.2 acres. Again, we know we're going to have to present a grading plan to the township during the land development process. We don't anticipate that being a concern. The next variance involves woodland disturbance. As you can see from this plan, this overlays our proposed development on top of the existing site, which is almost entirely woodlands. The ordinance allows you to disturb 50%. We need to disturb 100%. Now, what we are proposing instead, and what Larry's proposing, is instead of just having 1.8 or so acres of uncontrolled mangly trees, what we're going to do is actually control it. What we're going to do is build a decent, reasonable site, and we're going to border it entirely with green giants. We are going to actually plan this out. We're going to submit a landscaping plan to the township during land development, but essentially, and this dovetails with our next variance request related buffering, what we're proposing is one green giant every 10 feet. With time, this is going to be a very lush border around the entire property, and it's going to look far, far better than the existing mess of woodlands that is home to potentially multiple people living inside tents. So that, and again, we know we're going to have to go through land development to confirm that, and we're going to take input from the township engineer in order to move forward with a plan that works for everyone. Specifically, that leads me again to my next variance request, which involves buffering. The existing ordinance requires a mix of flowering trees, bushes, shrubs, that sort of thing, throughout the entirety of the 30-foot buffer area between our property and the church to the north, our property, the church to the south, as well as the township property to the rear. It also requires 30 feet technically in this spot where the parcel kind of cuts down. What we're proposing instead is a limited buffer area in this particular stretch where the property is a little thinner. And what we're proposing is instead of that mix of trees, what we want to do is just install or plant more than 100 evergreens. So technically it's a variance, but we're just offering a different form of buffering than what's otherwise within the ordinance. So it's a partial variance to allow a different form of buffering that again is going to be fleshed out during land development. The last variance relates to access, and this is probably the simplest one. The ordinance requires access be no wider than 35 feet from the roadway. We're proposing 40 feet. The additional 5 feet lets Larry's trucks come in and out a little bit easier, especially when you're trying to make that right off of the parkway and maybe a car is breathing down your back. This helps you make the turn and not have to slow down as much and not have to avoid some of that traffic. So it's purely a safety issue. And again, we know that we're gonna have to work with the township, PennDOT, on making sure that this access works and making sure that it's safe. But again, we're just asking for an extra 5 feet. And that's, I would say, is A, de minimis, and B, it's not exactly the reason why you have the ordinance to prevent something like this. You just don't want internal streets or driveways being like, super highways. And we're not trying to do that. So at the end of the day, those are the variances. This is the project. I have here with me Larry Fulford, who you heard from quite a bit last time. So if the board has any questions regarding Larry's business, Larry can come on up and answer those. I'm just going to do a little bit of a housekeeping thing here. Larry, why don't you come on up? Larry, do me a favor, introduce yourself to the board.
Larry Fulford.
All right. You heard everything I told the board?
Yep.
You understand it all?
Yes.
You agree with it all?
Yes.
Is there anything you change?
No.
Would you be willing to adopt my statements to the board as your testimony tonight?
Yes.
Remember the last time you were in front of the board?
Yes, I do.
You remember everything you said that time?
Yes.
Still true?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Your business hasn't.
Everybody should remember what I said last time.
Yeah. Your business hasn't changed?
Nope.
All right. If the board has any questions, you'll be happy to answer those, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you think this property is going to work out a little bit better than the last one?
Yes, a lot better.
All right. Fingers crossed. If the board has any questions, that concludes the applicant's presentation.
I wanted to ask you about mulch, but
Jeez.
Stinky stuff.
anybody have any questions from the board?
Just one question. It looks like it's far enough off the road, but just for trucks, your trucks out with the trailer, they'll be able to swing in there, right?
Yes.
From the one
It's roughly about, I think we're having a 60-foot, I think it was 60 or 70 feet back, setback, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's a PennDOT road, so PennDOT will tell you what's going on there with that, but I think that's how we engineered it.
Anybody else? Bob? Think that's it? Anybody from the audience? All right. Everybody done here with, huh? Yeah, I'm gonna get to him in 1 second. That's it.
All right. Great.
Thanks, Larry. Come on up, guys. One at a time, please. Get sworn in.
I do. Thank you. Good evening. My name's Lou Rotuno. I was part of the purchase of this property back in 1998. And I've been a member of the congregation, Church of Christ, for over 40 years. And the reason why I believe that this is very important is because that piece of property is very dangerous. When he talked about people, when council talked about some of the problems that we've had there, they're real. I mean, people living in those woods, fires have been set. We've had to call the police numerous times. There's been vandalism. On Wednesday nights when we have our Bible studies, you know, we walk out to the parking lot in the summertime, and especially the women, we are concerned for them. We walk them out. So it's really a situation that I truly believe that is could be very dangerous. And, you know, one of the things that we've been concerned with, honestly, as the congregation, is the liability of owning that piece of property. Somebody gets hurt there. We found drug paraphernalia back there. It's just a constant battle. It's a constant battle. It's a beautiful place to be able to hide, you know, and do whatever they do back there. So that's all. I just wanted to kind of just reiterate what council said about the dangers there and what's been going on.
So you would be for the project?
Oh, absolutely.
Just want to make that clear.
Absolutely. By the way, did I say that I am an unpaid preacher at that church? Okay. All right. So there you go.
Thank you for your service.
Come on up, sir.
Hopefully I won't keep golfing. My name's Kurt McKay.
Hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
Okay, do you swear that the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Say your name again.
Sure. It's Kurt, C-U-R-T, McKay, M-A-C-K-A-Y. I'm one of the trustees for the church and doing all the paperwork for the sale. And what I've seen here tonight, I love this. This is exactly what, when we first decided to put this property up for sale, I told the guys, I think this would be great for a landscaper. And lo and behold, we got one. So, and the way he's doing the buffers, perfect. It's exactly what I envisioned. So I'm really glad we came here tonight and I was able to see this. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. You know what I need? Motion.
I'll make that motion to approve.
I
I'll
need a
second it.
second by Gerard. Call the board.
Mark DeMarcus,
Yes.
Gerard Lycon,
Yes.
Jim McMahon,
Yes.
Colleen Dunn,
Yes.
Ed Murphy, yes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Real quick to the board, just make sure you keep the stuff from the continuances, please. And then with that being said, I need a motion to adjourn.
Make that one.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned in due form. Thanks, everybody.